everybody, it's Pam and I'm really excited to be back with another stitch tutorial for you today. Today we are going to work on the Lansdowne Toque. The Lansdowne Toque is one of my favorite hat patterns, and the reason being is that it is a really easy pattern to learn and memorize, and it gives you this really great texture. I have now written this pattern for not only bulky weight yarn, but also worsted weight, DK weight, and sport weight. So depending on where you live and how warm you need your hat, there will be a pattern for you. All of these patterns are free on the Sincerely Pam blog, and I will give a link in the description. Today we're going to work on a bulky hat just because it is so much easier to see the stitches when working a tutorial. So I'm going to put these ones aside and pull out my Brava bulky weight yarn. I really love this acrylic yarn. It is soft, it's squishy, it is warm, it's easy to work with, and I love all of the different color options. So this one is the color Dove Gray, and as you can see, I've already been using it because I absolutely love it. And I'm also going to use my Andromeda Streamline Swirl Hook from Furls Crochet. Again, links to all of these will also be in the description. So we're going to start off this pattern by making a magic circle. There's a few different ways you can make it. The way I like to do it is by simply taking the yarn, folding it over so you have a loop. Then I'm just going to pinch the loop to make sure it doesn't slip while I insert my hook and pull up a loop. And there you go, that is your circle. So when you work into your circle, you're going to work over both of these yarns. So we're going to chain one and work 8 half double crochet stitches in that loop. So you yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. And that's your first half double crochet, and you're going to do that 7 more times. So there you have 8 half double crochet stitches in your magic circle. To close up the circle, you're just going to take that tail at the beginning and pull it closed. And you can give a fairly good tug there. And then once you weave that in at the end of your hat, you are going to secure that in there and it's not going to come apart. So you're going to have a nice tight spot right there where you don't have to worry about your hat coming apart. You will then join to the first stitch made using a slip stitch. There you go, your first round is done. So now starting in round 2 and continuing throughout the body of the hat, you're going to work every second half double crochet into the 3rd loop. So we chain 1. And then let's talk about the structure of a half double crochet stitch. So normally when you're working any kind of stitch, you work into the top 2 loops only. So this would be where you would place your hook. But in a half double crochet stitch, you also have a horizontal bar. So if we flip it over, you can see this bar right here that kind of runs horizontally along the back of your half double crochet stitch. So instead of working in the top 2 loops, every second stitch will be worked in that horizontal bar instead. So let me show you. So we've already done our chain 1. We're going to do our first stitch in the top 2 loops like we usually do. And then the second one that we would work, so we're going to do 2 stitches in each stitch around. So the first one goes into the top 2 loops, and the second stitch will be our increase stitch, and it'll be in that 3rd loop, just behind those top 2 loops that we worked into. So yarn over, pull up, and complete your stitch. So you can see how it's kind of sitting behind that first stitch. So you're going to continue that all the way around. So top 2 loops, and then the third loop. Then again, top 2 loops, and the third loop. Top 2, third. So you can see it's really easy to find with your hook. Your hook's gonna have, you know, you just kind of almost have to just stick it in back there, and then it'll easily grab onto that third loop. So it's not a real struggle to find it at all. So each stitch from the previous round will have 1 stitch in the top 2 loops and then another stitch in that third loop behind it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I increased in each stitch all the way around, so I can now join. And my second row is complete. So you can already see that great texture that you get from working in that third loop. So row 3 is where it gets a little bit tricky, but it's not that complicated. You just have to keep track of when you're working in the top loops, when you're working in the third. So this time you're going to work 2 half double crochets in the first stitch, half double in the next, 2 half double in the next stitch, 1 half double in the next. And again, alternating front or top 2 loops and back loop. So top 2, back loop, top 2. So now the next stitch, you're going to start by working in the back loop. 1, 2, and then you're going to end in the third loop on the next one. 3. Increase, 1, 2, and then 1 stitch, which will be in the front, top 2 loops there. So you can see how that pattern is continuing, but this time you're alternating if you're starting with the top 2 loops or the third loop. One, 2, and then 1. 1, 2, and then 1. And there we are. We're done with round 3. So the next round begins with a chain 1. Now we're going to half double crochet in the first 2 stitches and then increase in the third stitch. Again, alternating between the top 2 loops and the third loop. So 1, 1, and then an increase. 1, 2. 1 stitch, 1 stitch in the third loop, and then 2 stitches. 1, 2. And you're going to continue that all the way around. And there's the end of round 4. So now when we're ready to start working in the round for the rest of the body of the hat, what you're going to want to do is you're going to continue just like we did, where we chain 1 and then alternate top 2 loops and back loop all the way around. So after working the last stitch of this row, or round, sorry, you're not going to join it. Instead, we are going to work in one continuous round all the way for the entire length of the hat. To begin this, what we're going to do is we're going to work a regular half double crochet stitch because we ended with 1 in the 3rd loop. So we're going to add 1 extra stitch into the last stitch we just worked. So now for this example, instead of having 32 stitches after working 1 in each stitch around, I now have 33 because I added 1 more. So now what we're going to do is instead of joining, we're just going to work our next stitch, which will be in the 3rd loop. It'll be the 3rd loop of the first stitch we worked in that round. So instead of joining, we've now kind of joined it with a half double crochet in a sense. So now we're just going to continue alternating top 2 loops and 3rd loop until we are approximately 1.5 inches from our final desired length. And then the last 1.5 inches will be the band of the hat. So I'm just going to go ahead and work all the way until we get to this point right here. Now that I have finished working round 11, which is where I worked in a continuous round without joining, working a half double crochet stitch in the 3rd loop of every 2nd stitch, I am roughly about 1.5 inches from my desired length. So next what I'm going to do is start with step 12, which isn't really a round or a row, it is just 2 stitches. So all we're going to do is now single crochet in the next stitch, and single crochet in the next stitch. I got ahead of myself here. Single crochet, and then slip stitch in the next one. And so that kind of brings us to working in or joining our round. So we are now finished working half double crochet stitches. We are now going to work on the brim of our hat. So for this bulky weight size, we start by chaining 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we work 6 chains. And now we are going to single crochet in the 2nd chain from the hook and across. So once we finish those 5 single crochet stitches, we are going to slip stitch into the next stitch of the body of the hat. So that's going to kind of join or attach our brim back into that hat. So that is row 13. For the next row, we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch to start our next row. We're going to then turn our work. We're going to skip over those 2 slip stitches. We're going to pretend they're not there. And instead we're going to put our hook into the back loop of that last single crochet stitch we made, and we're going to loosely slip stitch. So make sure you don't pull it too tight in these slip stitches because you're going to have to work into those on your way back down the brim. So slip stitch all the way across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is round or row 14. For the next row, you're going to chain 1, turn your work again. We're going to work back down. So we're going to work into the back loops of all those slip stitches. 1, so single crochet all the way down, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you're going to finish that row again by putting a slip stitch into the next unworked stitch. And there you go. And you can see how the ribbing is starting to come along. So that's going to go all the way around the bottom of that hat. So you're going to slip stitch into the next one to start your next row. Turn. And again, gently slip stitch across. You don't want to go, so you're going to skip the 2 slip stitches that are into the hat and then slip stitch into the next single crochet. And you're going to do that all the way across without pulling too tight. I know sometimes when we join the round of an item, I know I tend to pull on it a little bit to make sure it's joined good and tight for some reason. So this is not one of those cases where you want to do that. So I chained 1 and I turned, and now you're going to want to single crochet across into those back loops there. 3, 4, 5, and again, join it back to the hat with a slip stitch, and then slip stitch again. And you're just going to keep doing this all the way around. So I just finished working my last repeat between rows 14 and 15. And as you can see, I was about to lose my game of yarn chicken, but thankfully I have just enough to finish up this hat. So I just finished single crocheting in the back loop of those slip stitches. Now I'm going to join it with a slip stitch into the next stitch of the body of the hat. Then I'm going to slip stitch over one more time. And now to finish it off and to bring both of those edges together, I am going to kind of, this is where it gets a little bit awkward to work in, but I'm going to bring both sides together, and I'm going to make sure I'm working into the wrong side of the brim. So I want to work into the inside of the hat so that seam is not as visible. So I'm going to work again into the back loops only, and I'm going to slip stitch my way all the way up. So I am going to put my hook into 2, 3, 4, 5 into the back loop of this part of the hat, so the last row that I worked, and then into the back loop of the very first row of the brim. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just want to make sure I'm getting it in the right stitch in the right spot. So as you can see, I have my hook going through both the first and the last rows, and I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch those together. And then I'm going to do it again in the back loop of this one, the back loop of the first one, join with a slip stitch. I'm going to continue all the way up. And in the last one, back loop, slip stitch, and there we go. So then I'm gonna finish. I guess I don't really have to worry about cutting the yarn from the ball. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull that all the way through. Make sure it's nice and secure, and you can see by working in the back loop that seam really isn't very noticeable at all. So afterwards, I'm just gonna go ahead and trim this up, weave in my ends, and there you go. There is the bulky hat in the Lansdowne Toque stitch tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this stitch tutorial. If you like this, I would absolutely love if you could please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.